Welcome back, everyone, to the Deep Dive.
Yeah.
Today we're going to tackle something that pops up a lot, especially in feminist philosophy, and that's objectification.
A big one for sure.
Yeah. So to kind of start us off, and drawing from the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, objectification, in its simplest form, is seeing or treating a person like an object.
Mm-hmm.
And that especially happens in the sexual realm.
Yeah.
So, we're kind of like laying out the key arguments here.
Right.
For someone who's already familiar,
Yeah.
kind of like you're a philosopher, you already know kind of the lay of the land.
Right.
But we're going to focus on all the nuance.
Exactly. And all those little points of contention.
Yeah.
Where people kind of diverge or come together. So, yeah, it's going to be a fun one.
So we're going to be drawing on a bunch of different feminist viewpoints. And obviously our main source here is that Stanford Encyclopedia article.
Yeah, that's our kind of guiding light.
Yeah. And our goal is to really kind of like tease out how different thinkers have approached this idea. And hopefully at the end of this, we'll have a little bit clearer, more sophisticated understanding of what objectification even is.
Absolutely. It's kind of like, I don't know, a tutorial for a fellow philosopher.
Yeah.
That's kind of the idea.
Exactly.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so I guess we can kind of just jump in with Martha Nussbaum. She's pretty important.
Yeah, super influential.
Yeah, she had a pretty big influence here.
Yeah.
So back in 1995, she kind of laid out 7 features of what it means to objectify someone.
Okay.
So we can kind of go through those.
Yeah, let's do it.
The first one is instrumentality,
Okay.
which is treating someone as a tool.
Right, and that's a classic philosophical idea, instrumentality.
Yeah.
Treating someone as a means to an end rather than an end in themselves.
Yeah.
So it's not just like, hey, can I borrow your lawnmower?
Right.
It's saying, like, you exist to serve my purposes.
Yeah, your entire being is just there.
Your goals and desires are irrelevant to me.
Yeah.
I'm using you for my own purposes.
So the second one is denial of autonomy.
Okay.
Which is seeing someone as lacking self-determination.
Right. So again, another classic philosophical idea.
Yeah.
Autonomy is essential to what it means to be a person.
Mm-hmm.
And to deny someone their autonomy is to say, you don't have the right to make your own choices.
Yeah.
You're not capable of rational choice.
Yeah.
I need to direct you. I need to control you.
And then inertness. The third feature is treating someone as lacking agency or the ability to act in the world.
Yeah. And so this really builds on denial of autonomy.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you consider someone inert, you're not just saying they can't make choices.
Yeah.
You're saying they fundamentally lack the power to change anything.
Yeah.
To participate in their own lives.
Yeah.
They're just kind of a static object.
Yeah.
As opposed to an active agent.
So the fourth one is fungibility.
Okay.
Which is the idea that one person is interchangeable with another.
Right. As long as they fulfill the same function. It doesn't really matter who it is.
Yeah.
You can think about a cog in a machine.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter which cog it is, as long as it fits in the machine and does its job.
Yeah.
And so to treat someone as fungible is to say, you don't have any unique value.
Yeah.
You're interchangeable.
Yeah.
Any other person could do what you're doing.
So next up is violability.
Okay.
Seeing someone as lacking boundary integrity.
Right. And that directly speaks to the Kantian idea of respecting persons.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, each of us has a personal space, a right to our own bodies, our own emotional boundaries.
Yeah.
And to treat someone as violable is to disregard those boundaries.
Yeah.
To say that you're open to invasion, to penetration without their consent.
Yeah.
Without respecting those boundaries.
So then the sixth one is ownership.
Okay.
Treating someone as property that could be owned, bought, or sold.
Right, and this is a fundamental denial of personhood because you're reducing someone to a thing that can be traded, disposed of.
Yeah, chattel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so to treat someone as ownable is to deny them their basic human rights.
Yeah.
Their freedom, their dignity.
And lastly, denial of subjectivity.
Okay.
Failing to take into account someone's inner experiences.
Right. Their thoughts, feelings, experiences.
Yeah.
You're not acknowledging them as a subject with their own perspective on the world. You're just treating them as an object.
Like an external phenomenon.
Right.
Yeah, they have no inner life.
Exactly.
So that was Nussbaum.
Okay.
Then we have Ray Langton.
Okay.
And she kind of builds on this in 2009.
Okay.
With 3 additional features.
Okay, great.
So the first one that she added was reduction to body.
Okay.
Identifying someone solely with their physical form.
Right. So you can think about this philosophically in terms of the mind-body problem. You know, we have this long tradition of thinking about the relationship between the mind and the body. And to reduce someone to their body is to deny the significance of their mind, their personality, all of those non-physical aspects of their identity. And to say, you are your body and nothing more.
So then reduction to appearance, pretty similar.
Okay.
Primarily defining someone by how they look.
Right. And that goes beyond just the physical form to include things like clothing, makeup, hairstyles, all those superficial aspects of their presentation. And so again, this is about reducing someone to their most superficial qualities and ignoring all the deeper aspects of who they are.
And lastly, silencing.
Okay.
Treating someone as if they are mute.
Right. So this is a really important one because it's about power. It's about who gets to speak and who gets to be heard. And silencing someone is about denying them their voice, their right to participate in the conversation. And it can be done in a lot of different ways. It can be done through explicit censorship. It can be done through more subtle forms of exclusion or marginalization. But the effect is the same, which is to say that your voice doesn't matter.
You don't have anything valuable to contribute.
Yeah.
So I guess now that we have this framework, I mean, I guess it seems like there's this general consensus among a lot of thinkers, especially within feminist philosophy and obviously with things like pornography, that objectification is morally problematic.
Right.
Like it disrespects the person's inherent dignity.
Exactly.
I mean, you're reducing a person to just a means.
Right.
You know, and they're not an end in themselves.
And you're denying their autonomy, their agency, their right to be treated with respect.
So even Nussbaum herself, she raises the question. Whether objectification is always negative.
Right.
Which I imagine this sparks a lot of debate among philosophers.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's a huge question. I mean, is it always wrong to treat someone as an object? Or are there certain contexts where it might be okay?
Yeah, and her example was, I thought it was funny. She's like, you know, using a lover's stomach as a pillow.
Right.
Like, that could be seen as objectification.
Yeah, you're using their body for your own comfort. But if it's consensual, if it's done within a context of love and respect, then is it really harmful?
And she even gave an example of D.H. Lawrence's novels, like Lady Chatterley's Lover.
Right.
She was saying that that's an example of positive objectification.
Oh, interesting. So what's going on there?
Where like lovers, they focus on body parts. And they kind of like identify with them. You know, and they temporarily deny autonomy. And subjectivity. But it's within this context of equality and respect.
Right. So it's not about power or domination. It's about mutual pleasure and exploration. Interesting.
And there's even someone, Nancy Bauer. I think her idea is, you know, even trying to like define the features of objectification. It's even a good thing to do.
Right.
Like, are we even asking the right questions here?
Yeah. So she's taking a more metaphilosophical approach. She's saying, like, what are we even doing when we try to define objectification? She's like, if you view the world through a feminist lens, like, you're going to see it. You know, you don't need like this strict definition. So that's really interesting. It is interesting.
So I guess we can kind of move into, I guess, Kant.
Yeah, the big guy.
The big one.
Yeah.
So he was, I mean, he was like huge on sexual ethics.
Absolutely.
He famously argued that like any kind of sexual activity outside of marriage inherently leads to objectification.
Right. He was very strict about that. Very strict. He believed that sex should only take place within the context of marriage. And any other form of sexual activity was morally wrong.
And he even had this analogy that I thought was really funny.
Oh, yeah. What was it?
He was saying, like, someone who's used for sexual gratification outside of marriage. It's like a lemon that's been squeezed dry and then discarded.
Oh, wow.
Like just tossed aside.
Yeah. So the idea is that once you've used someone for your own sexual pleasure, they're no longer of any use to you. You just discard them. Like a piece of trash.
So for him, objectification really came from lowering someone. You know, who has humanity. Their rational nature to just an object.
So he's drawing on his idea of what it means to be a human being. And for Kant, that means having reason. Having autonomy. And having dignity.
Yeah.
And he believes that when you treat someone as an object,
Yeah.
you're denying them their humanity.
Yeah.
You're reducing them to something less than human.
And humanity for him is our ability to set our own ends.
Right, to choose our own goals and pursue them rationally.
Yeah.
And that's what gives us dignity.
Yeah, that's the basis of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he was really against, like, treating humanity merely as a means.
Right, because that's a violation of the categorical imperative, which is Kant's fundamental moral principle.
Yeah, it has to be an end in itself.
Right.
Yeah.
You should never treat someone merely as a means to an end.
And he was really concerned with degradation, subordination, dishonoring of humanity.
Yeah, he saw it as a kind of corruption of our moral nature, a kind of self-abasement.
Yeah.
When we engage in these kinds of activities.
And even like a potential loss of humanity.
Right.
You know, reducing someone to a mere tool.
Yeah, like they're no longer fully human.
Yeah.
They've lost something essential.
But Rajawani, he kind of brings up the point that, like, you know, complete reduction of someone's humanity. It's pretty rare.
Yeah, it probably doesn't happen that often.
Yeah.
Except in extreme cases, like rape.
Yeah.
But even then, it's debatable.
Yeah.
So I think Helani is right to point out that Kant might be overstating the case a little bit.
Yeah.
But I think his underlying concern is still valid. That when we treat people as objects, we're doing something morally wrong.
Yeah.
Even if it doesn't completely destroy their humanity.
And he even acknowledged that women were, like, way more frequently victims of objectification.
Right.
Particularly with things like prostitution and concubinage.
Right.
Which were very common in his time.
Yeah.
So he wasn't just talking about, like, an abstract ethical principle. He was looking at the social realities of his time.
Yeah, absolutely.
So he defined prostitution as selling yourself for sexual gratification. And he was saying, like, by doing that, you essentially, like, alienate yourself from your humanity.
Yeah.
And you become a thing to be bought and sold.
Exactly. You're commodifying your body.
Yeah.
You're treating it as a product to be exchanged for money.
Yeah.
And that, for Kant, is a fundamental violation of human dignity.
And concubinage was.
Oh, okay.
You know, a non-commodified but still an unequal sexual relationship.
Right.
And he was saying, in these cases, like, the woman kind of, like, surrenders her whole person to the man's disposal.
Right.
But he doesn't do the same.
Yeah.
So she's kind of made into a thing.
Exactly. There's no reciprocity. There's no equality. It's a one-sided relationship.
So the only relationship for him that could accommodate sex without this objectification was monogamous marriage.
Right.
He saw that as, like, this union based on equality.
Yeah.
Full reciprocity.
Yeah.
Where they surrender to each other, but they also legally own each other.
Right. And that legal framework is important for Kant.
Yeah.
Because it ensures the stability and equality of the relationship.
Yeah.
It's not just a matter of feeling.
Yeah.
It's a matter of law.
Yeah, there's like a contract.
Yeah.
There. Yeah, so I guess we can kind of move on to Catherine McKinnon and Andrea Dworkin.
Okay.
Anti-pornography feminists.
All right.
So they also emphasize the connection between, like, inequality and objectification.
Yeah, right.
And they see it as, like, this dynamic, you know, with a powerful objectifier and a powerless victim.
Right.
But they kind of see it.
Okay.
Not just in, like, certain relationships.
Yeah. Okay.
But, like, society.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Like the wider context.
Yeah. They're looking at the bigger picture.
Yeah, of, like, gender inequality.
Right.
So they were saying, like, you know, in a patriarchal society, women as a gender are objectified by men as a gender.
Right.
You know? Yeah. So that's, like, their main argument.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
And they see pornography as, like, the key mechanism here.
Right.
For perpetuating this objectification of women.
Right. So they see pornography as a kind of propaganda that teaches people to see women as objects and to treat them accordingly.
And McKinnon, she defines pornography as, like, the graphic, sexually explicit subordination of women.
Right.
You know, which dehumanizes them by portraying them as, like, objects.
Yeah, and commodities.
Yeah.
Right.
So she's basically saying that, you know, pornography.
Yeah.
It doesn't just reflect existing objectification.
Yeah.
But it actually creates objectification. It actively constructs this idea of women as sexual objects. Readily available for male consumption.
Right.
So she's kind of like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Going against the grain here.
Yeah, she's challenging the idea that pornography is harmless.
Yeah.
Or that it's just a form of entertainment.
Yeah.
She's saying, no, it's actually a form of oppression. Yeah. It's a way of perpetuating male dominance.
And both of them.
Okay.
They see objectification.
Yeah.
Very similar to Kant.
Okay.
As treating someone as a means to an end.
Right, which is a violation of their dignity, their humanity, their right to be treated as an end in themselves. Yeah. So it's very Kantian in that sense.
Dworkin she uses.
Yeah.
No, it's pretty stark language.
Okay, what does she say?
She describes objectification as this societal process that makes a human being less than human, a thing, a commodity to be used. Right. So this depersonalization, it diminishes their social standing. Right. And ultimately their humanity. Yeah. But Jean Hampton, she kind of critiqued this position. She was saying. Yeah. It's almost like she's concerned that this kind of view could inadvertently echo patriarchal viewpoints.
Interesting. How so?
By implying that sex itself is degrading for women.
I see.
Instead of focusing on the inequality.
Right, right. Yeah. So she's saying don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? Sex itself isn't the problem. Yeah. It's the way that it's used to oppress women in a patriarchal society.
Okay, that's a good point.
So then McKinnon, she kind of goes on and elaborates on this idea of a sex object.
And she's basically saying it's someone whose worth is defined by their physical appearance. Right. And their usability for sexual pleasure. Right. So it's very similar to Kant. Okay. Where the woman is existing for the purpose of male pleasure. Yeah. Not as an end in herself. Right. And a really interesting point that they make is that, even if a woman consents to being used in pornography, they're saying that's not true consent. Right. Because gender inequality.
Right, because they might be doing it out of economic necessity or because they feel like they don't have any other options. Yeah. So it's not really free consent, it's coerced consent.
They even have really powerful analogies. Okay. McKinnon, she compares a woman to a disposable cup.
Wow. Yeah. So she's saying that women are treated as disposable objects.
Yeah.
To be used and then thrown away.
And Dworkin she talks about a patriarchal world where men are the only human center. Right. And everything else, including women, is just objects for their use.
Yeah. So it's a very stark vision of the world. Yeah. But I think it captures something important about the way that patriarchy operates. Yeah. It's about putting men at the center and everything else revolves around them. Yeah. Including women.
But unlike Kant, their focus isn't on sexuality per se, but on the way sexuality is constructed, represented, disseminated through pornography.
Right. So they're not saying that sex is bad in itself. Yeah. They're saying that pornography is bad because it distorts our understanding of sex. Yeah. And it teaches us to see women as objects.
And they think that pornography actually teaches consumers that women are objects for consumption.
Right. And it desensitizes us to violence against women because it shows women being abused and degraded and enjoying it.
Yeah. And they highlight this portrayal of women in pornography as enjoying being used and even violated.
Right. Which is a very dangerous message to be sending because it normalizes violence against women and it makes it seem like it's okay.
And there's even Lori Watson. Okay. She argues that it even impacts men and boys by shaping their desires and expectations in harmful ways.
Right. So it's not just women who are harmed by pornography, it's men too. Yeah. Because it gives them a distorted view of what sex is supposed to be like.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Yeah. And then there's this question of causality and influence.
Right. So does pornography cause objectification, or does it just reflect existing objectification? Yeah. It's a chicken and egg question.
Yeah, and Assiter and Langton, they explored this causal link.
Okay.
Yeah, and McKinnon, she argues that pornography itself is an act of objectification.
Right.
Against women.
Yeah.
As a social group.
Yeah, so she's saying it's not just a representation of objectification.
Yeah.
It is objectification in itself.
And they really reject Kant's solution of marriage.
Yeah.
They say, like, objectification.
Yeah.
It's present in all heterosexual relationships in a gender unequal society.
Right. So they're not buying Kant's idea that marriage is a solution. They're saying, no, marriage is just another form of patry.